Welcome everyone to today's EDC webinar. We will get started in just a couple of minutes. Again, welcome everyone. My name is Tracy Schneider and I am the Economic Development Collaborative's Communications and Marketing Manager, and we are so excited to have you join us. Before we get started, I'd like to review a few housekeeping items. As this Zoom event is held in webinar format, everyone is muted and your cameras are off. This is being recorded and you'll receive an email with a link to the recording and any resources we talk about in the next few days. We will, however, not be sharing the slides as this information changes rapidly. Instead, we're going to direct you to our EDC COVID-19 website, which is updated regularly. This is the place to go for the most current information. Please submit any questions you have at any time using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. If you're dialing in by phone today, you can submit questions via email. Email your questions to webinar@edcollaborative.com. Again, that's webinar@edcollaborative.com. EDC webinars would not be possible without the help and support of Visionality. Visionality helps us run the back end of our events, and their fantastic team is available for technical support. If you run into any tech issues, please put them in the chat. Today, Emily will be helping us with the back end, and Cecily will be assisting in our Q&A portion. For our returning and new friends, we thank you for joining us. Since 1996, the EDC has been focused on providing a pathway to business growth, economic prosperity, and high quality of life for all. Today, the EDC serves Ventura, Santa Barbara, and Los Angeles County-based businesses, community partners, and civic leaders. Hosting the region's Small Business Development Center, the EDC provides no-cost professional consulting with a team of over 50 business advisors. As a community-based lender, our loan program has funded $20 million in requests and has maintained a commitment to reaching underserved communities, with 67% of our loans awarded to minority and women-owned businesses. At the end of today's webinar, we'll be sharing the phone number for our business assistance line that offers resources and help in both English and Spanish. Signing up as an EDC client is free, takes just a couple of minutes, and provides you with lifetime access to all of our no-cost services. Our excellent staff and advisors are ready to help you build the business that you've always wanted. In today's presentation, we'll be discussing the forgiveness process for the Paycheck Protection Program loans from the Small Business Administration. We are joined by Roger Gilbert, Vice President and Government Guaranteed Lending Manager for Montecito Bank Trust, Dr. Alexandria Wright, the region's SBA Outreach Specialist, and our very own EDC Small Business Development Center Financial Advisor, Juliana Ramirez. And with that, let's get started. I'm thrilled to introduce and start us off with Dr. Alexandria Wright.
Morning, everyone, and welcome. Thank you, Tracy, for the introduction. As your time is valuable, we'll get right into this PowerPoint. And Tracy, I do appreciate you making the statement that this information does change rather quickly. So that said, we're going to put any links that you find in the PowerPoint in the chat box for you to access. And then do stay in touch through the EDC, as well as the links that we put in the chat box for any updated information on forgiveness. So PPP forgiveness, we're gonna go from. Okay, so a couple of basic pieces of information that many of you may already know. So there has recently been an updated forgiveness form for those who had PPP loans of less than $150,000. And we'll go through the forms in a couple more slides here. I wrote them all out for you. The borrower does have 10 months from the times the funds were exhausted or the end of your covered period to apply for forgiveness before the first payment is due. So in other words, if you chose a covered period of 24 weeks, your covered period is defined as the amount of time during which you were expending those PPP funds. You have 10 months after the last day of that covered period to apply for forgiveness before the first payment is due. Please do note, though, that a PPP borrower can apply for forgiveness anytime within the maturity of the loan. Okay, the PPP loan in general is a 1% fixed interest rate loan that is non-compounding and non-adjustable on portions that are not forgiven. There are no prepayment fees if you choose to pay this loan off. And again, the payments do begin once the borrower knows, the payments begin, and let's write this correctly, 10 months from the time of the last day of your covered period, or once the borrower knows how much has been forgiven. Once you submit your forgiveness application, your entire PPP loan goes into deferment until that decision is rendered. The lender will notify the borrower upon the decision. Currently, the process for decision, we're going to go over this in another slide, is that you submit your forgiveness application through the lender which you got your PPP loan from. If borrowers do not apply for forgiveness, again, payments will start 10 months after the day of the last covered period. And again, this is a 5-year maturity loan if you took a PPP loan after June 5th. For those who took a PPP loan prior to June 5th, you have a 2-year maturity, though you are able to ask your lender if they can extend that to a 5-year maturity. A couple just other important notes are EIDL advances. The economic injury disaster loan up to $10,000 grant funding advance is no longer deducted from PPP loan forgiveness. Okay, so that's a real important one that came out after the Economic Aid Act passed in December of 2020. Expenses paid with PPP loan funds are federally tax deductible. You always want to contact the IRS for details. They are the experts at irs.gov. There's expanded forgivable expenses are permissible for any unforgiven PPP loan. Simplified forgiveness application, as I already mentioned, for PPP loans of $150,000 or under, and that is distinctly either a first draw or a second draw. Each one is underneath $150,000. Forgiveness processes are distinct per draw. So you're going, if you had a first draw and a second draw PPP loan, you're going to submit 2 forgiveness applications. And finally, forgiven PPP loans are not federally taxable income. So what are the terms of PPP forgiveness? For your first draw PPP, the employee and compensation levels must have been maintained. If they haven't been maintained for an issue beyond your control, you may qualify for a safe harbor. You do want to visit our website at sba.gov/PPP for a better understanding of those safe harbor clauses. Also, the loan proceeds must be spent on payroll costs and other eligible expenditures. So those other eligible expenditures did include rent, utilities, healthcare benefits, operational costs, PPE costs, my apologies, personal protective equipment for any employees that you needed, or that needed that equipment. And then also at least 60% of the proceeds must have been spent on payroll costs. That is your minimum allowable amount. In other words, up to 40% can be spent on other eligible expenses in your operational costs, no more than 40% though. For your second draw, an employee compensation and compensation levels must have been maintained in the same manner as required for the first draw loan. The loan proceeds again must be spent on payroll and other eligible expenditures, and at least 60% of the proceeds are spent on payroll costs. On the PPP forgiveness applications, you will actually see line items. The first line item of Form 3508 is your payroll costs. Lines 2 through 8 after that are the actual line item expenditures of other eligible expenditures. So if you have a question about what was permitted and what was not permitted, you can always go to the application, and that application will actually run you through things like your business mortgage interest payments, your rent or lease payments, your utility payments, covered operational expenditures, property damage costs, any supplier costs from your supply chains, and any covered worker protection expenditures, like I said, the PPE, that personal protective equipment. So the first thing you want to do is visit our website at, the link here is live, and I do believe it's getting put into the chat box right now. This will take you directly to the page that lists all the information on the PPP program and forgiveness. Please do note that this information changes rapidly, and there are going to be more changes occurring. So your best bet to understand the most current guidance on forgiveness is to go to this website. We are treating it as an agency as a living document, so everything will be up there. For example, all three of these forms, 3508E, 3508EZ, and 3508S, were all revised as of May 24th, 2021. So if you have uploaded or downloaded a copy of a forgiveness form prior to May 24th, you're going to want to go back in and check out these revised forms. Okay. Now, Form 3508 is your traditional PPP forgiveness forms for all those PPP loans over $150,000. Okay. If you are a sole proprietor, an independent contractor, or a self-employed individual with no employees, you are permitted to fill out 3508EZ. Now, each lender may have their own version of these forgiveness applications, and we'll hear soon from Montecito Bank Trust that will run us through their process. But do note, these forms that you'll find on the SBA website are your basic general information that all lenders will be asking of you. So the lender may ask additional questions, but at minimum, they're going to ask for the information that's listed on these forms. Form 3508S, the last form listed in this little list, that is the simplified forgiveness form that should only take about 15 minutes to fill out for those who received PPP loans of less than $150,000. I do see that we're getting some chat questions, which I can stop briefly afterwards, but let's get through this last couple of pieces here. So what is your process for PPP loan forgiveness? First, you want to contact your PPP lender and complete the correct form. Again, know whether or not you need to complete 3508, 3508EZ, or 3508S. You then want to compile your documentation. Now, many lenders are just starting to open their portals for forgiveness, and that is because much of their capacity was needed for the actual processing of PPP applications. Now that the program has formally closed, you will likely be hearing from your lender with regard to forgiveness procedures. Most of the first PPP loans were taken out in May of 2020. And so those loans, if you had a 24-week covered period, your first payment will be coming due in September or October. So you still have a little bit of time to get this done and to get this processed. So you want to compile your documentation, even if your lender isn't accepting forgiveness applications yet. This is always a good thing to have in mind. That way you have your paperwork ready to rock and roll. You want to have your bank statements, your bank account statements, or a third-party payroll service provider providing reports documenting the amount of cash compensation paid to employees, first and foremost, since this is the Payroll Protection Program. Then you want to have any tax forms that are needed, right? Or equivalent third-party payroll tax forms as well for the periods that overlapped with the cover period. So that includes payroll tax filings reported or that will be reported to the IRS, anything you've already prepared and documented. You want to include your state quarterly business and individual employee wage reporting and unemployment insurance tax filings reported, or that will again be reported to the relevant state that you're in. This information, just so you know, you don't have to write this down furiously. This is located on the website that I just put up on the previous slide. So you can find this at www.sba.gov/PPP. You want to collect any payment receipts, canceled checks, account statements, documenting the amount of any employer contributions to employee health insurance and retirement plans that the borrower included in your forgiveness amount. And please, this is an important one. We want our small businesses to take advantage of the employee retention tax credit, okay, under Section 2301 of the CARES Act, okay? This is an excellent, excellent program, but please note, you cannot double dip. So if you paid employee payroll and benefits using PPP, you cannot also claim that under the employee retention credit. But if you ran out of PPP funds and you still maintain those employees in that compensation, then please, please do visit our website and irs.gov to see about the employee retention credit. This is an excellent program that actually provides compensation back to the business owner and not just refunded. This can actually preclude you from having to even cut the check to begin with on those federal tax dollars. So the employee retention credit under Section 2301 of the CARES Act. But again, do not include, when calculating eligible payroll costs for loan forgiveness, anything that you're claiming the employee retention credit under. Please also note, if you are in the middle of a quarter, so the employee retention credit goes quarterly. If you paid a month of the quarter using PPP and you're going to claim the other 2 months of employee retention credit, that's perfectly acceptable. You can divide it that way as long as you're not double dipping on the same amounts. After you collect your documentation, you're going to want to submit the forgiveness form and the documentation to your PPP lender. And then you want to continue to communicate with your lender throughout the process. Now, I will also let you know one additional piece of guidance that we were just informed of. Come mid-July, we are looking at a July 15th start date for a new pilot forgiveness program whereby anybody who has taken out a PPP loan of less than $150,000 will be able to apply for forgiveness directly with the SBA. We are very aware of many of the issues occurring with reduced forgiveness amounts with particular financial institutes, and we are working with those financial institutes to clarify and resolve those issues. So if you are a small business that is currently struggling with your forgiveness application and your lender has reduced the amount of your forgiveness, please do note those two things. A, we are aware of it and we are working with the lender to resolve those issues. They are no fault of yours. And B, we are opening up this portal so that those with under $150,000 in PPP loans will be able to apply directly through the SBA. And then finally, if there has been an error in a forgiveness application that may have been caused by the lender, perhaps a decimal point was out of place or an addition calculation wasn't completed correctly. Lenders are permitted now to recalculate that forgiveness amount. So this notice came out and was effective immediately that lenders can send a note through the platform, and you know who you are, using the message type payment or reconciliation questions to request that forgiveness payment correction. And most recently, as of last week, there is now a button available in the portal for recalculations for lenders. So with that, that concludes our basic understanding of PPP forgiveness. I'm going to leave it on this slide for a moment. And Tracy, would you like me to address some of the questions in the chat box before we move on, or would you like to wait till the end?
Let's wait till the end, and I'd like to encourage everyone to please move your question from the chat to the Q&A. This just helps us keep organized, and then if we need to, we also know who to call on to potentially unmute yourself and add some additional information. So let's keep going and pass it to Roger, and we'll address some more questions at the end.
Thank you, Tracy.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Tracy. And I will talk more specifically about what Montecito Bank and Trust has done and how we handle forgiveness applications. There will be some repetition in this presentation, which is not necessarily a bad thing. We all realize that this is a confusing program, and perhaps hearing some of the features of the program and some of the procedures more than once will actually be helpful. We can go to the next slide, and there it is, PPP forgiveness. Next slide, please. That's just me again. And Montecito Bank and Trust, we, between 2020 loans and 2021 loans, we've done over 3,600 loans for over $320 million in support of 23,000 or so jobs. And particularly, we happen to have a lot of relationships with nonprofits, and we have done a lot of loans for nonprofits in Santa Barbara and Ventura counties, which is where we're located. Next slide, please. Okay. And if you can click through, it'll populate that slide. So currently, we are taking applications for loans done in 2020, which were first draw loans. We are not yet taking applications for loans that were completed in 2021. But the good news is there is no immediate deadline. The earliest that an application for a 2021 loan would be due would be January if you were using an 8-week draw period, and then April or May of 2022 if you were using a 24-week covered period. So the question was addressed by Alex. When do I have to submit my application? It's there's a 10-month deferral period, as she said, after the 8 or 24-week covered period. So we have some people with applications that are coming due now who did them in April, and those are the ones that we are processing now. We've covered everything in July. We're now processing applications that are due in August. Out of the 2020 loans, about 1,850 loans we've processed, between 1,300 and 1,400 of them. So we're making very good progress. And we are using an online portal. So if you go to if you're a Montecito Bank and Trust customer and you go to our website, there's a link to an online portal that allows you to sign in using your tax ID, employee identification number, or social security number, your email address, and then the authorized signer's social security number to log in, and then enter your application online, upload any required documentation online as well. One caveat is in terms of your deadline, if you are planning to sell your business, you want to talk to your lender as soon as possible, because that makes things a little more complicated. The SBA strongly recommends that you do not sell your business until your application has been forgiven, until your loan has been forgiven, or you've paid back the loan. There is a process for completing a business sale transaction if that's what you need to do. And so talk to your lender if that's the case, and make sure you don't violate any of the rules by selling a business before you've taken care of your PPP loan. Next slide, please. And this is just a disclaimer. If you can get to the next slide. Oh, sorry about that. And just a quick disclaimer, this is for educational purposes only. As Alex said, things change often. We urge you to speak to your accounting and legal advisors before you do anything. Make sure you know how this program applies specifically to you. We know that this is very challenging. There are many different changes that have occurred along the way, and it's okay to have questions. We understand you have questions. And next slide, please. I'll talk briefly about some of the program features and different applications, the use of the funds and qualification for forgiveness, a lot of which Alex has covered, forgiveness decisions and considerations in applying, and a little bit more about our process. Next slide, if you will. I think if you take anything away from my presentation, one of the most important things would be that all of this information and essentially all that you need to complete your forgiveness application is found in the application and the accompanying instructions that go with it for each of the 3 forms. Links to those forms are available on our website, Montecito.bank, and also SBA.gov. The forms do change, the instructions do change, so it's important to get the most up-to-date form and instructions before you do anything. So I would urge you to read through the form and read through the instructions for the form carefully and completely before you do anything. It really is very complete in terms of what you need to do, what documentation is required, and which form you should use. Our online portal guides you through the application so that it helps you determine, if you have not already, which form to use. If you're $150,000 or less, you're using the short form. If you're over 150,000, you're using the standard form or the EZ form. And there are a couple of considerations, a couple of questions to answer that will determine whether you're able to use the EZ form, which, as the name promises, is easier than using the standard form. So you probably want to use that form if you qualify and if you can. Very quickly, although we've covered it already, the forgiveness covered period was either 8 or 24 weeks, depending on when your loan was dispersed. That has been changed. It's now, instead of either 8 or 24 weeks, it's any period between 8 and 24 weeks. And the alternative payroll period has been replaced by the ability instead to be able to use anywhere between 8 and 24 weeks. So the SBA has made it a little bit easier to come up with your covered period and supply a payroll report that corresponds with it. Your deferment period, as we said, is 10 months. It was originally 6 months, and it was changed to allow a little bit more flexibility for businesses to be able to spend the money and to apply. Likewise, expanding the covered period from 8 to 24 weeks was in an effort to allow businesses to be able to use the money, because we know that a lot of businesses were not able to operate and therefore difficult to spend the money on payroll. So the program was changed to allow for that and to make it more flexible and more useful. The proportion of funds that need to be used for payroll, likewise, was changed from 75% originally to 60%. As we said, you want to use 60% or more for payroll during the covered period, and up to 40% for the other expenses. Likewise, those other expenses were expanded to allow for other expenses so that you can apply, submit your expenses, and get complete forgiveness for your loan. Again, you want to submit your forgiveness applications before the expiration of the deferment period so that you don't have to start making payments of principal and interest. You can apply up until the end of the loan term if you want to, but for most people, it's advantageous certainly to apply before the end of the 10-month deferment period. Annual wages for employees are capped at $100,000 per person. Annual wages for self-employed individuals are generally capped at the $20,833 that you are familiar with from your original application. Next slide, please. And so once again, there are three forms. There's for $150,000 or less, the simplified form, the 3508S. Forgiveness, though, is not automatic. You still must apply for forgiveness. In our case, you'll apply online, and that application will be processed fairly quickly. The SBA has done a very good job of moving those along pretty quickly. And in our case, you will receive an email with a link to the SBA forgiveness letter telling you that your loan has been forgiven, or telling you that the SBA has paid the bank back for your loan plus the 1% interest. And then there's no further action required other than to keep your documentation in case the SBA should ask for it. In the case of the S form, that's 4 years for payroll information, 3 years for documentation other than payroll documentation. For loans greater than $150,000, you must include your documentation as appropriate. That applies to the easy form or the standard form. And generally for loans greater than $2 million, there was a loan necessity questionnaire that was required as well, but we expect that that is changing and may no longer be required. There is one version for nonprofits and one version for for-profit borrowers. Loans of $2 million or more are automatically reviewed by the SBA. Any PPP application or forgiveness application may be reviewed by the SBA, and some are, and there may be a request for additional documentation. So you want to, even if you have not been required to submit the documentation, you want to hold on to that documentation for the required period. That's 6 years for loans over $150,000 in case anyone should ask for it, and have that available. The SBA can ask for it up until 6 years for those loans over $150,000. So do it now. Put that together in either a paper file or an electronic file. Do it now rather than 5 years from now. It'll be much easier to do it now than to try to put it together later. And in the instructions for those forms, there's a very specific list of documents that must be submitted with your application and documents that do not have to be submitted with your application, but that should be held onto and made available if requested. And next slide, please. Talks about eligible expenses, payroll and non-payroll. Again, all of this is covered very specifically in the instructions to those applications. I urge you to read those in as much detail as possible. It could take you a half an hour. It might take you a number of hours to review them carefully, but it'll be worthwhile and make it much easier for you to apply and much more understandable when you go through the form to apply. The lender is required to review the application for completeness. And so you make it easier on yourself and on the lender, the person reviewing it, if you have a complete application with all of the required documentation. Next slide, please. And so again, covered in the instructions, but the use of funds, what is allowable and what isn't. Payroll and similar compensation. It can include tips. It can include vacation, parental, family, medical, or sick leave, allowance for dismissal or separation. It can include employer-paid benefits, such as health benefits and retirement benefits. So that's different from employee-paid, which is already included in gross wages. It can include payment by the employer of payment of state and local tax on payroll. And so, and again, it's capped at $100,000 a year, prorated for the covered period. So when you supply a payroll report, if it's a third-party report, Paychecks, Paylocity, any of those, they generally have an online report that you can go to, put in your covered period, and print out a report that already does a lot of this work for you. It'll cap salaries, it'll calculate your FTE, your full-time equivalent number of employees for you for the covered period. It'll do a lot of that work for you. There are instances where you'll need a specific report for a number of FTE on January 1, 2000. You can print out a report, a payroll report for January 1 of 2000 and have a perfect report with the number of employees. So if you have a third-party payroll provider, by all means use their online portal to create those reports that you need for payroll. They're very well done. It'll save you a lot of work and a lot of time trying to come up with all of those figures. Next slide, please. And next slide, please. Next, after use of funds. There we go. Make note. And if you would populate all of the drop downs. Thank you so much. Okay. And so there are some things that you'll be asked in the application. You don't want to reduce anyone's wages by more than 25% unless that's someone making more than $100,000 a year. You'll be asked about your FTE headcount, and you will be able to use those safe harbor exemptions to receive forgiveness, even though you may have reduced the FTE. Always when you're doing this, please consult with your CPA or other tax advisor, legal advisors, before you take action and submit the report. There may be nuances that apply specifically to you, such as Alex mentioned, how you use the employee retention tax credit. So it's important to seek tax and legal advice before you do that. And if you're planning to sell your business, please talk to your lender before you do that so you don't violate any of the rules about forgiveness there. And if you move to the next slide, please. We can move past this slide to the next one. These are specific examples about reduction. Self-employment and forgiveness, some specific factors for self-employed individuals. You can use how you use your 2.5 months of your net profit to replace pay, and what you can use to apply for when you apply for forgiveness. You can, if you use the 24-week covered period, for example, you can then use the entire $20,833 for payroll. If your loan was more for that, you may need to include some of those other expenses like utilities, rent or mortgage interest, etc. Next slide, please. And suggested documentation and record keeping. I won't go through all of those again. And once again, if you want to refer to these, they are spelled out very well in the instructions to each of the forms. The S form, the easy form, and the standard form all have very detailed instructions about documentation and what is acceptable. And next slide, just so you can see what it looks like. This is what the S form looks like. Ours is online and mirrors the questions that are on this document. But this is essentially, this is what the form looks like, and these are what the questions are. As you can see, you're filling out information about yourself, your company, your loan. You want to have your SBA loan number available. This form is actually a little outdated, but gives you an idea. You're attesting to these items and signing your form. So it's very simple to get through, but do read through the form and do read through the instructions before you do this. But you should be able to get through this in no more than 15 minutes, 5, 10, 15 minutes to get through the simplified form. It's designed to be simple, to be easy, to be fast. Next slide, just a quick look at the EZ application. A few more questions to go through. You have to show some of your calculations on this form where you did not have to on the S form. You are not required to submit documentation with the S form. You are required to submit documentation with the EZ form. And then we move, next slide, to the standard form, which is a little bit more work, maybe a lot more work, where you need to work through a worksheet, put it on a schedule, and then feed the information from the schedule into your actual application before you sign initially your attestations and sign. So if you don't need to use this form, you probably don't want to. Answer the questions and see if you can use and qualify to use the EZ form. Next slide. The bank is acting as a go-between with the SBA. This is actually administered by the SBA, and the final decision is from the SBA. Our responsibility is to help you submit an application to make sure that it's complete and that the numbers check out. We don't verify everything that you attest to, but we do try to make sure that your application is reasonable, that the numbers agree, and that it appears that you are eligible for forgiveness or not eligible for forgiveness. Generally, the vast majority of applications have been fine and are eligible for forgiveness. If they're full forgiveness, that is. It's possible that there's partial forgiveness, there's a reduction because of one of those factors, or it could be denied in whole. You do have time to appeal that you'll file with the bank, and that's very rare. We have not seen any appeals at this point. Next slide, just a quick timeline shows you that the bank has 60 days to review a complete application and then submit it to the SBA. The SBA has 90 days to make a decision, and then generally you're informed of your decision. You have time to appeal. It's rare, and then you hold on to your documentation and you move on. You can go to the next slide. Again, the takeaway from this is please review the applications and the instructions. The vast majority, probably all of the information you need is in those instructions. If you're a Montecito Bank and Trust customer and you need us, we have the Relief Center. You can contact us at 833-628-4722 or Relief Center at Montecito.bank. You can use resources on our website by all means. All of the information is available at SBA.gov, including all of the latest forms, all of the latest updates, and also useful information if you want to dig in even further at treasury.gov. Next slide, I think that just says thank you. So thank you very much for your time and attention. I appreciate it and hope that was helpful. And Juliana is going to take over next.
Thank you, yes, thank you so much, Roger and Alexandra. Very, very useful information and important information. While the effects of COVID-19 pandemic are still ongoing, and while some businesses have largely recovered from the initial decline, others continue to lag, and some recovered only to experience subsequent declines. Future impacts of the pandemic, including whether business closures become permanent, will depend in part on policy responses and the ability of business owners to work on their business rather than just in their business. While the federal response has already included emergency funds extended through the Paycheck Protection Program and the EIDL funds, it is also important to note once again that business owners need to continue working on their business. And what we have learned at EDC is that businesses that have been able to recover successfully or are in the way of recovering successfully are those businesses that have spent time in organizing their business. Organizing in the area of record keeping, cash flow management, and bookkeeping and accounting having their bookkeeping and accounting up to date. In addition, it is important to have a support system that can help you with the different aspects or areas of your business. At EDC, we have advisors that can help you in multiple areas, such as human resources, particularly as it relates to hiring and following safety guidelines and employment regulations, operations, particularly as it relates to everything that happens within your business and keeping it running and earning money, as well as making sure that the business owners understand the systems, equipment, people, and processes needed to make the organization function. If you need assistance in this area, we certainly have advisors that can help you with this. We can also help you with legal as it relates to rental moratoriums and contracting, or finance, understanding if your business has viability, managing your debt, understanding your financial position, understanding your financial performance, and preparing to access funds from a lender outside of the resources that you probably already took advantage of. And a strategic planning to set priorities and focus your energy and resources to strengthen your operations. Having that support system is really what we highly encourage you and want to let you know that we are here for you. Another part of your support system, you should be your accounting professional and tax professional. As you have heard in the presentations, it is highly encouraged that you talk to them to see how these programs, particularly the PPP, relates to your business and how it's going to impact it. Please know that there's resources available at no cost, and that's what we are here for. And don't forget that having a good relationship with your banking institution will also assist in the process of recovering. Here at EDC, again, we have been helping and assisting clients in all these areas, and we hope that you will continue to come back and take advantage of our resources. That's what I wanted to share with you today, and I think we can jump into our Q&A section.
All right, thank you so much, Juliana. Hi everyone, my name is Cecily Hendricks. I'm with Visionality, and I'll just be reading off some of the questions that are coming in to our presenters today. So a big thank you to Roger and Alexandria and Juliana for that very, very helpful information. It's so needed right now. So I see that Alexandria has already been answering a lot of questions here in the Q&A. So I'm going to just go ahead and start by reading some of these open questions that are here. And if we have any other ones come in, I'll just read those off to you. So our first question is from David, who said, I received 2 PPP advances in 2020 and 2021, each for $15,000. I'm self-employed. I don't have a formal payroll arrangement, and my expenses are calculated as part of my year-end 1040 itemized tax return. How do I approach applying for forgiveness?
If I may, and then I'm going to pass this over to Roger. I left this question up there for a reason, because this was a real important question that teaches the lesson that we want all entrepreneurs to know. Separate your personal expenditures from your business expenditures. Even if you're self-employed, even if you're a sole proprietor and you're running everything through that personal account, cannot emphasize this enough. Please, please set up a separate separate bank account for your business dealings. It's the modern era. Transferring funds is not that difficult. You can even set up 2 accounts at the same financial institutes. But please, for exactly this reason, to separate those finances and to better understand with clarity where you expended this economic aid so that it doesn't get convoluted. And with that, I do want to thank Roger and Montecito Bank and Trust. They are an extremely awesome partner, SBA lender. They are a certified CDFI through the Office of Treasury, a Community Development Financial Institute, and they are extremely responsive and supportive through this program. So thank you so much, Roger and Montecito Bank and Trust. You have been a beacon of light amidst a lot of confusion for a lot of people. And please do note, I think Roger may have mentioned it, that Montecito Bank and Trust does serve Santa Barbara and Ventura counties. And I see Juliana wants to chime in there too, so I'll hand it off to Juliana, then Roger, if you could please go through what you would expect then from a sole proprietor.
Sure.
Alex, I cannot agree with you more. And this is exactly one of the areas that we can assist at EDC. We can certainly, if you are confused or don't know where to start, this is exactly where you can come to us and we can help you with how to organize yourself so that you can then, separate those funds, even if they were already in the one account, so that you know how to go from there. And then, you can then go to Montecito, but I'll let Roger, add more to this question or answer.
Thank you, Juliana. Yeah, and we really are proud to have been able to be a part of this. I mean, this has been very important to the community, and if you're a community bank, this is what you're here for. So we appreciate that. Ideally, what has happened is you received a PPP loan, you put it in your business account, and then you paid it to yourself. You wrote a check to yourself to your personal account. If you didn't do that, you need some help straightening out where the money went. It's not difficult to prove. If you're a sole proprietor and your business got a PPP loan and you're the only employee, it shouldn't be too difficult to prove that you used it for payroll, but hopefully you did it the right way. And this is what we suggested to people: deposit the money or have the money. If you were already a customer, we deposited it in your business account, and then you wrote checks or you transferred money to yourself personally, and that was your payroll. And that is the way to go about it, and that's the way to handle your expenses, as everyone is alluding to. So if you haven't done that before, please start doing that now, and ask your advisors, whether it's Juliana or your bookkeeper or your accountant or someone, to help you show a paper trail so that you have that available and you can prove that you use 60% or more of the funds for payroll.
Excellent. Thank you all so much. All right, so our next question is from Nicole. Nicole says, is there a way to talk to an SBA rep directly? My lender tells me they can't give me any more assistance and that I should call the SBA. I called the SBA number and an automated message said I should talk to my lender.
Thank you, Cecily. And again, I wanted to keep this up as a good one. And Roger, I'd invite you to step in as well. So really, it's the lender that you need to communicate with. However, we as a public agency are absolutely available to chat with you. That automated message is likely coming through the 1-800 number. So if Tracy, if you could please put in the chat box, our Los Angeles District office number is 213-634-3855. You will need to leave a message, and myself or one of my colleagues will return the call shortly. But again, this process, and I do apologize for that, and with the confusion and the rush of all of this economic aid, guidance isn't necessarily well distributed amongst lenders. You have lenders that had a lot of pulling staff from everywhere so they could just process these applications. So they're just not fully informed or maybe well versed really on a lot of the guidance. But it really is that lender that you want to speak to. But we are always absolutely happy to assist you if you want to give us a call at the LA District Office. We do serve LA County, Ventura, and Santa Barbara. So Roger.
Thanks, Alex. Yeah, I'm not sure what the issue is, so it's hard to say. Generally, the PPP program is administered completely through the lender, and you speak to the lender, not to the SBA directly. So I'm not sure what it was about and why a lender referred you to the SBA. And it is, you know, and we thank everyone for your patience, because just, you know, to put it in perspective, I think the last time we calculated it in terms of the number of loans, you know, in a little over a year, we did about 22 years worth of loans. And the same applies to the SBA. In fact, it's probably even more for the SBA, because it's not just PPP, it's EIDL, it's shuttered venue, it's, you know, the restaurant assistance program. The sheer number of loans and volume of loans and programs that ran through the SBA in this last year and a quarter are just phenomenal. So everyone is a little bit overwhelmed, and if you're getting pushed around a little bit, you know, and people are doing this and pointing you somewhere else, that's the reason. It's not because no one wants to help you. It's just they're a little bit overwhelmed and they're not sure where to go. But most questions specific to the PPP program should be handled by your lender. If you're a Montecito customer, I'm not really sure what we would refer you to the SBA for, other than one of those other programs, the EIDL or the shuttered venue or the restaurant program that are administered directly by the SBA. So hard to say, but hopefully someone will help you either way. It may take a little bit of time.
Thank you, Roger. And I'll just follow up quickly with that. Thank you for mentioning the breadth of the loan processing we've done. Our Office of Disaster Assistance was the traditional loan processor for everything. So under the CARES Act, they became the go-to source for PPP, for SVOG, for the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. They processed more loans since October of 2020 to now than they have in the past 10 years. So that's really what's happening here. But, you know, we do understand that the larger financial institutes as well seem to have loan officers that, again, aren't well versed in the guidance. They're directing you to SBA, and we are here to assist you. So please, please do, if they're directing you to the SBA, give us a ring at the LA District Office. We'll help provide some clarity and some language that you can return to your lender with to get the issue resolved.
As well as EDC. So if they don't get to, you know, to reach, you know, the SBA or your office, Alexandra, we can certainly help them as well with clarifying that and getting, you know, that package or, you know, prepare for that. And that's exactly what the advisors are here for too as well.
Thank you, Juliana, and I appreciate you mentioning that. And just so everybody knows on the call, the SBA subsidizes a series of resource partners, and the SBDCs are one of those. And that Juliana is exactly accurate with that. They have a highly, highly talented team that assists small businesses with loan packaging and processing and all of this economic aid. And this is exactly what your tax dollars pay for. It's free, confidential, one-on-one assistance for you. So please do contact your EDC SBDC if you need.
Great, thank you. Thank you, all three of you. And it looks like Emily here just dropped that number in the chat as well. So please take note of that, everyone. All right, I see one more question in here. It looks like I think we're just about out of time, but if anyone does have any last minute questions, please drop them in the Q&A chat. This is an anonymous question. It says, does Montecito Bank and Trust have an estimated date or month to start accepting applications for forgiveness of PPP loan number 2?
At this point, it's a guess. So we're still processing the applications for 2020. You know, we do have a finite group of resources to do this, a finite number of people to do it. And we're not quite at the point where we can take on the 2021 applications. The 2020 applications all are due, the last one is due on October 31st. So the worst case is we would start right after that. My best guess is that we will be able to start before that, as most of the applications that we have are coming due in August. So once we get August out of the way, in September or October would be my best guess as to when we will start accepting applications for loans funded in 2021, both first and second draws. And we will send out emails to everyone. We'll post it on our website and let you know when that's ready to go. But there's no reason to panic. Once again, there's nothing due before January, and that's only if you're using an 8-week covered period. So you still have plenty of time. We'll make sure that everyone has an opportunity to submit an application before the deadline and doesn't have to start making payments.
And if I may, Cecily, because I know you're kind of asking for some more questions here, and Roger, I don't know if you're able to speak to this, but since we have Montecito Bank and Trust on the line here, and I just want to make sure that everybody understands, as positive that as we want to be, we are in an era where likely we're going to have more economic disruptions, be it natural disasters, be it global economic recessions, be it healthcare pandemics. We are likely going to see this large disruption happen again. And you want to make sure that you are with the right lender for your small business. And I do believe Montecito Bank and Trust will be expanding here to our little county in Ventura, to the Oxnard area. I don't know if you are able to speak to that.
That's in a planning stage, and I expect that may happen. You know, we do cover quite an area, and we do other types of government guaranteed lending as well. So as we continue to struggle, and as we come out of this economic period, sometimes the first loans that are available to customers are government-backed loans, mostly SBA. There's also USDA, there are state of California programs as well. And those are programs that are tailored to small businesses that just make it easier for a bank to say yes. So if we have a loan request that we, for whatever reason, we don't feel that we can do conventionally without a guarantee, we'll reach out to the SBA and see if we can get a guarantee so that we can say yes. And, you know, the bank always still has some skin in the game, but the SBA typically will provide, you know, a 75% guarantee or more in difficult economic times. And Alex, you can speak about it if you want to. Sometimes they increase that guarantee to encourage banks to go a little further even in extending credit to customers. So there are SBA programs that will go on beyond PPP that small businesses can look to provide capital and to provide funds to expand your business, to fund purchases of equipment, real property, etc. And so, Alex, if you want to talk about that, feel free.
Yeah, thank you for even mentioning that. As we get back into recovery here, absolutely. Most of the SBA loan programs, the 7A programs, there's several categories underneath those, everything from export-oriented programs to just your regular working capital. Those are 85% guaranteed programs. Again, trying to encourage the private sector financial institute to lend out more money. The 504 program for equipment and real estate purchase, build capital purchases. And so with that, you want to always pay attention to our website at sba.gov. You can find all of this information there under funding. And again, working with our good trusted partners, our lending partners like Montecito Bank and Trust, and other community financial institutes who participate in SBA lending. And let's also not forget that the EDC has their own microloan fund, a Department of Commerce microloan fund. And you guys here in Santa Barbara and Ventura also can take advantage of Women's Economic Ventures microloan fund, which is actually an SBA microloan fund. Those are often a real good way for the smallest of businesses to get that working capital that you need, typically under about $250,000, I believe, Roger, if I'm not mistaken. And so please do reach out, look at the EDC website. I believe it's just EDC or edcollaborative.org for the microloan information, or weaveonline.org for their microloan information.
It is edcollaborative.com. And
thank you.
Yeah, and also this is exactly one of the areas where we can assist you too, particularly as you think about getting more debt or thinking about, seeking for, more funds in addition to what you already received. Please take the time to, speak with an advisor who can, really help you assess and analyze your business in both, in all areas, particularly your, business viability and managing the debt, because that we definitely don't want to set yourself for failure. Even though you may look good on credit, does not necessarily mean that your business is viable. So let's just make sure that you are tapping into all the areas in your business to make sure that you are setting yourself for success, and then going into a lender like Montecito Bank and Trust or all the others that Alex already mentioned. Definitely something to to work on. And if you don't know where to start, again, you're not alone. So don't forget, we are here for you.
Wow, thank you three so much. What a wealth of information. I don't see any other questions right now. Was there any other topics or anything else you three wanted to address before we wrap it up here? All right.
I just wanted to thank Roger and Alex for well, I think Tracy is back. I let her do it. I was going to say on behalf of EDC, I wanted to thank you, but here, you go ahead, Tracy.
Thank you, Juliana. Love that you're ready to jump in case that I wasn't. Yes, because I do want to thank all of our presenters today, not only for your time, but also for your continuous commitment to helping small businesses and for just sharing your experience with us. In addition to helping you with the forgiveness process, I'll do one last plug for our EDC consultants. They are ready to answer questions and help you navigate today's complex business environment. We can help you with business topics such as finance, marketing, operations, human resources, international trade, and so much more. You can get started by calling our business assistance line at 805-409-9159. Again, that's 805-409-9159. That information is also in the chat if you want to grab it out of there. And calling this line is also the first step in learning more about our local loan program. Give us a call. Please don't hesitate to reach out, and we'll help you get the information and advising that you're looking for. As I mentioned, we'll send you a follow-up email with the recording of today's presentation in the next few days. And we hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day, and we thank you for spending part of it with us. Thank you all.
Thank you.